So yeah, it's become a bit of a trope in the app development community that you don't make a to-do list app. I mean, by all means, make one as your pet project to learn the language or whatever, but then everyone always gets the idea to publish it on the App Store. There's hundreds of the things. They don't usually do much. They don't distinguish themselves from each other. And all in all, it's not considered a viable business. Yeah, so about that. Back in March this year, I was laid off from Meta after working there for 10 years. Before you say anything, this was a good thing. I'd actually asked my boss's boss to be included in these layoffs. I felt that after 10 years I was a bit burnt out, felt a bit like I'd done my time in big tech, or at least for now, and wanted to try something new. I had savings and a severance package, so I have a little bit of a financial cushion under me, and I thought now is the time that if I'm ever going to go indie, then I should do it. And going indie's been a dream since I was a teenager, really. And, before I knew how the software industry worked, I figured that the people who made apps sat in a room and thought what they wanted the apps to be and made them, and their customers bought them and everything was great. Obviously, I know a lot more about the industry now, but I still reckon that I'm attracted to that kind of work, actually carefully crafting a piece of software for users rather than for sort of tech company interests. If you're making, I've heard it called artisan software, and I love that term. If you're making that, then you're not trying to optimize for eyeballs and engagement and all the different things that a company that's more sort of focused on advertising or focused on growth at all costs, or any big company that's beholden to its shareholders would need. But if you're doing it for yourself, for the love, you've got to make enough to pay the mortgage and make it a sustainable business. And that's hard, but you don't need more than that. You don't need exponential growth. And that's my indie dream. So after leaving Meta and taking a month off to recover from all that, then I decided that I would give it a go. I would take one of my projects in progress and try and actually build, ship, market it. And that app is an app that I've been thinking about for probably nearly a couple of decades, actually actively working on for maybe a year or so before this point, but very slowly. I really didn't have the energy to do a side hustle alongside a full-time job. And that app is called Deluge. And it is my take on a personal task manager app. Yes, I know what you're going to say. Does the world really need another one of those? I believe I have a unique take on this. I believe that there's a niche in the market that I could fill, and I'm going to try and prove it out. This is the app that I want to exist, that I would find really useful, and I hope that enough other people will find it useful too. Part of the problem of pitching a productivity tool, a productivity system, they're sort of inherently personal. Everyone's got the way that they want to do things and also the way that would work well for them. It's not quite as simple as a pithy one-line pitch, but I'll give it a go. And then I'll talk you through the actual sort of main areas of Deluge so that hopefully you can see how they fit together. Put simply, Deluge is a to-do list app for people who are overwhelmed. For people who might be scared to look at their to-do list. They might have so many things on there that they know they'll never finish. And so any app that requires you accurately appraise all the things that you're intending to do, the user gets overwhelmed, the user hides, the user does not use the system. And if you don't use the system, then the system doesn't work for you. I'm trying to solve that in a few sort of interconnected ways. So in terms of main areas, Deluge, like many other to-do list apps, has an inbox, and that's where you can get things out of your head. You put something in the inbox that you want to write down and not be forgotten, but you're in the middle of something else. So far this is very similar to other apps like OmniFocus. One key part that will, hopefully you'll see, integrate into the whole system. So we also have a today list. This is another thing that a lot of people find useful. Most apps either have one or you can easily form one using an app's features such as flagging things or making a custom view or custom list. Today list contains stuff that you're intending to accomplish today. So when you're actually doing things, you can look at the today list rather than looking at the big long list of possibilities. Okay, so far so good. And if you know you need to do something specific, then fairly obviously any app will have a search, but I've presented it here because this is actually designed to be the main way that you go into finding things that you know you need to do. You can search for the item and then add it to the today list or do whatever you want with it. This is designed to be a primary interface for the times when you think, oh yes, I know that I need to do this. It's already on my list somewhere and I've got the brain space to work on it now. So here we've got a thing that I'm calling goals. They're called projects or task groups or parent tasks or folders in other systems. They're the things you put tasks in. So goals are your organisation, but I don't want them to be heavyweight. You can assign a task to multiple goals. So you could have one goal that's like go to the hardware store and another goal that is paint the wall. So the action buy paint might be in both of those. And I'm deliberately doing this with multiple goals to avoid the type of system where you have to wonder whether the thing you're making should be this one type of thing or another. So OmniFocus has its projects and its tags, and you have to work out whether go to the hardware store is a project or if it's like a tag for that you do regularly, things like that. In Deluge, I wanted to simplify that. They're all goals. So now I've explained a couple of the core concepts, we're coming to the bits that I consider secret sauce, and the review process is one of them. If you've heard anything about GTD, Getting Things Done, the system by Dave Allen, you will know that if you subscribe to his methodology, you're meant to do these daily and weekly reviews to make sure that your system is up to date and accurate. Great, I think this is a great idea. There should definitely be reviews. The problem is, if you rely on the user to decide to do a review and then mentally do the things that they've decided need to be reviewed, that's incompatible with people who get scared and overwhelmed. So what we want is an app that actually holds your hand. We want an app that asks you the questions. And ideally, those questions should not be decisions as much as possible. Those questions should ask you some factual information, and you should be able to answer it. For example, if you have a task for when you need to buy shampoo, the app will help you repeat that task, but you don't know how long it is between needing to buy shampoo. I mean, it might depend what size bottle you buy. The app can ask you, do you need to buy shampoo? That's a factual question. You will know the answer to that. You will know if you go and look in the bathroom whether or not you need shampoo. And so then you can tell the app yes or no. And if you tell the app, yes, I need it, then the app can then put the task on your list. That's part of the review process where it asks you about tasks that you need to do regularly but not according to a schedule. That's a thing I'm calling Smart Repeat. It's really a good part of Deluge sort of looking after the user. You can make a blueprint for a Smart Repeat, then the task is in the system. You can forget about having to monitor it because Deluge will ask you, it'll give you reminders. So as well as Smart Repeat, there's other types of review question for things like if you've got a goal that you haven't touched in a while, it might ask you if you want to put that on hold. Yes, I know that one is more of a decision, but the idea is that there's no sense of giving up if you put something on hold. Like, that's a thing that the app praises you for doing. It helps you make sure that the things that are active on your list are things that you are actually actively concerned about at the moment, rather than things that you're sort of deliberately putting to the back of your mind. So that was quite a bit of explanation about the basic concepts, but I haven't yet come up with a sort of pithy way to explain this. These are the things that only by all of these features working together, I think we can get a sort of productivity system that people can trust. And I mentioned GTD earlier. Deluge isn't quite a GTD app. It's not designed to meticulously follow that system, but it's designed for people who like the idea of a system that has sort of rules and procedures and keeps up to date, but they are not able to do the sort of diligence of maintaining the system when they're stressed out about all the things they have to do. The idea of this app is that it handles maintaining the system by asking you the right questions at the right time. And about the only thing that you're obliged to do with Deluge is do this review every day. There hopefully won't be very many questions on it if you do it every day, but that's about the only thing it'll nag you about. If you've done the review, then it doesn't matter if you don't even do anything else in the app. You can know that your system has not got so far out of alignment with reality that it's failed. So back at the end of April this year, I really kicked off working on this full time. I have one other person I'm working with who is doing a bit of contracting for me in his spare time, and it's invaluable, in my opinion, to have someone else to bounce ideas off and just be able to discuss this whole complex system. I think I'd have lost motivation a long time ago if it were not for that. But I'm the one on it full time. So back in the end of April, start early May, we had a big kick-off brainstorming meeting. As I say, I'd been working on this app for about a year before this, and for even longer before that, I had had this idea kicking around that I'd been sort of mentally iterating on, mentally trying to simplify as far as possible, but no simpler, that kind of thing. And in this meeting, we threw a load of ideas around and tried to bring this concept to its core. Everyone talks about a minimum viable product. That doesn't mean a minimum product. It means a minimum product that actually meets the need that you're trying to solve, at least for some segment of users. I think the 6 things that I just showed you as the sort of core pillars of Deluge, all of those are needed to work together to form this minimal product. If you didn't have the review process, then it's nothing but a fancy checklist and it still has the same problems as any other app. The same would be true if you didn't have the to-do list, because then you wouldn't be able to go in and actually pick some things to do today without having to look at the big long list of all your tasks. After the brainstorming meeting, I was sort of working on 2 things in parallel. I was working on the infrastructure of the app, what I'm calling the backend, but I mean a client-side backend, how it stores data on the phone, how it queries data, that kind of thing. But I was also working on the actual design, and I made a lot of mock-ups. I really like using very simple ways of doing wireframes. This app is called Balsamic, because it deliberately doesn't let you actually draw something that looks like a full product. Like this review process that I've been describing and designing, here is the mock-ups for that. So we've got a sort of visual mock-up, and then I started coming up with sort of data model type things in these blue and pink notes, and then there's loads of different ways that the interface can sort of vary depending on the thing you're doing and the state that it's in. A lot of these was sort of done as an exploration, because in the act of drawing something out, then I realise that I didn't actually have as clear a concept in my mind as I thought I did. It's all too easy to think, this app asks review questions and then you have to answer them with forced choices. Well, what if the user can't answer them or won't answer them? You know, they need to know if they've got shampoo, but they're not at home. So you've got to have a skip button. That's what this kind of mock-up really helps with. And I did that for most of the main areas of the app. And likewise, when looking at the edit screens for tasks and otherwise, there's quite a lot on this one, because it's a lot more complicated than you think. And I first thought up, we'll need a form to edit a task. Yeah, sure, of course we will. But then there's loads of different contextual things, like depending on the kind of repetition that the task has, we're going to need different ways of representing repetitions, different user interface elements in order that the user can put those in. And of course, that in turn informs the data model. That's why I develop data models for things at the same time as thinking through how the user is going to interact with it. So all this was going on around when I started going full-time on this, towards the middle of this year. I had actually already done some kinds of explorations of the app, including, in fact, commissioning Lickability, a design studio in New York. That was a great process. Because I'm funding all this myself, I couldn't just have a design studio take the idea that was in my head and come out with flows, designs, visual treatments, user interaction studies for the entire app. I didn't have that kind of money. So what we decided to do was focus on a couple of the most interesting areas. One idea was the treatment of adding tasks to the today list. It was actually my contractor friend who came up with the idea to pull to add. You can pull down, like pull to refresh, and add a random task. And then through iterating with Lickability, then we made it so that the tasks sort of look like they're shaking until they're on the list. There's another idea, and this one I haven't fully prototyped in the interface yet, but I think I like it and I think it's going in there, is how to handle actually splitting up things in the inbox. You might brain dump a huge paragraph, especially if you're using voice notes or dictation or something, and want to turn that into multiple tasks. And Lickability came up with ideas for how they could be split. So by selecting some text and then using a split button, then that can be split out into a new task, leaving whatever's left just as plain text. It's things like this that having another, I don't want to say another pair of eyes, because these are very skilled people in user interaction design. They're better than a random pair of eyes. But having other people to work with brings more ideas into the mix, brings more concepts for how things might work. And as well as the great user interaction ideas, I did want Lickability to help me out with a visual treatment. They came up with some great ideas about how things might look, how things might be easily readable. And one of my favourite things they brought to the party was they taught me about this colour palette called Harmony, where the colours are perceptually the same brightness. So you can swap between them and you can assume that something will be just as readable no matter which one you pick. And that's great, especially when the user gets to pick a colour. They can pick one of the rows on this. So if you notice, there isn't a sort of bright yellow type colour that in some colour systems would be like way less readable than if you picked a nice blue or something. The row that is yellow, it's fairly dark yellow, a sort of mustard, at the same brightness as the sort of thing you might pick as an example blue. So I've got this colour palette fully implemented in Deluge, and when users get to choose a colour for things, then they will be picking from this. It's not to say that I'm going to use Lickability's designs for everything. So these were done before I was working on Deluge full time, about 3-4 months before. And the app's designs and concepts have been changed a fair bit since then. A lot of things have been tightened up. And also my understanding of how I want it to look and feel has changed since then. Having said that, Lickability's designs are what we used as a starting point for making the current UI of Deluge, and it's been invaluable for that. Another company I worked with is Icon Factory. You'll have seen the wonderful icon that they did for Deluge at the start of this video. And this is a finished product. This I am very happy with. Sadly, I commissioned it a few months before Apple introduced the concept of liquid glass. But I love it. It has texture, it has interest, it's a great visual metaphor, it has a lovely palette of contrasting colours, and I feel this really does summarise exactly what I want the app to be. So where are we now? There's a lot of Deluge that does exist. This is the actual app running in the simulator with just some sample data. As you can see, we've got some items in the inbox, and we can go to the today list. Oops, it's showing yesterday's, so I'll switch to today. There's one item on it already, but I can pull down if I want another one, and you can see we've got this jiggly thing. Of course, if I don't like this particular task, I can swipe it away and say not today. I've got these two tabs down here which are configurable. So you can make and save perspectives. Yes, I shamelessly stole the term from OmniFocus. These are saved views and searches. So you can see that I've got one here for available tasks and one here for remaining tasks. And of course, The remaining tasks one has many more items on there, but they're all things you can't do yet. And then anywhere in any of the lists, in any of the screens, in your search results, you can tap on a task and get this sort of icon bar. And I'm eventually going to go through and decide exactly which actions get an icon in the bar and which ones go in this additional menu. That's not a thing I've made a decision on yet. But that's how you interact with a task like anywhere. So you can go into an edit screen, go and make changes to it there. You can edit which goals it's inside, that kind of thing. And then when you're finished, you just tap again to put the icons away. And then we've got the review tab. The secret source of Deluge, the review process that's sort of guided. This is something that I'm still developing exactly which review questions will exist, but it does work. So I've pressed start review and we can see it's told me to process something that's in the inbox. And there's some helpful instructions exactly what to do. And the most common things I could do with it are in these big buttons down here. So this task will come out of the inbox if I add it to a goal. So let's do that. For the sake of argument. And now that button is green and we've got a done button ready to go. I'll just skip through to show you that there's a few different types of questions. And here's the does this need doing question that I talked about for the smart repeat. So Deluge thinks that water the plants might need doing. And if I say yes it does, then it makes an actual task about it and I can press done. And now that task is active and in the database and will probably show up on the today list at some time when I'm looking for suggestions of what to do today. So that's not a full demo of the app. There's lots more to see already, and also there's lots of work left to do. The main subsystems are in place, but with something like this that's so tied to someone's productivity workflow, the devil's going to be in the details. My aim at the moment is to get a version that's ready for sort of wider testing by mid-December or the end of the year at the worst. So as I mentioned before, then I had intended to do devlogs throughout this whole process, and I'm only just now starting them. My idea for these videos is to talk about sort of one interesting aspect of app development in each one. It might be a particularly gnarly problem I've been trying to solve. It might be code related, it might be design related, it might be something about the actual business of getting an app on the store, how I'm handling my accounts and taxes. But the idea is that I want to start bringing people along for the journey. This has always been my plan, and unfortunately it's taken me until now to sort of get around to it. Earlier on in the process it kind of felt like I really should be actually working on the app rather than things I consider sort of side issues like a devlog. I am going to have to get out of that mindset as we get closer to launch, because I know full well that apps will live or die based on whether people actually know about them. So marketing is going to have to be considered as important as the app itself. But I'm not quite at that place yet. There's still quite a bit to do, and I can also go back and talk about interesting things that I've already encountered. So I think I am going to manage to get a devlog series up and running. Please hold me to that. Please reply and comment if you would like to see more videos. And if there's any particular topics you want to see me talk about, then feel free to mention them. And I think at this point I'm meant to say like and subscribe. I hear that that's a thing that you're meant to do to make your channel be better. You can really tell I'm not an influencer. But anyway, I hope this was interesting. I will certainly share more with you in the coming weeks.